Oh, I'm sorry. I was just daydreaming about being able to retire early. In today's video, that is what we're discussing. We're going to discuss the FIRE movement and kind of everything that it encompasses. And I think, obviously we want to start off with, what does FIRE even mean? What am I even talking about? So when I say FIRE, I'm referring to Financial Independence, Retire Early. And it came from a book called, give me a second, Your Money or Your Life. I don't know why I keep forgetting that. It was a book that came out in 92, which is insane to say that was a long time ago. Come on, man, it's the 90s. It was yesterday. Anyway, that was a long time ago. And it didn't really take traction until 2010, which is interesting. And I think there's a takeaway just in that, right? Is that the author didn't quit pushing it until they found success in 2010. That's crazy. And that's a valuable takeaway. At least for me, it is. There's several things I've tried out that haven't taken off right away. You just got to keep pushing, man. Anyway, that's a side lesson. Financial independence, retire early is what FIRE stands for. It's really just the idea that you are placing your value on freedom more so than your career. So it's kind of a mental shift. And instead of the old school, like I'm going to work until I have one foot in the grave at a certain company, it's how do I put my money to work and let it do the work for me so I can go enjoy my life. So at its core, it can really kind of be broken down into 3 steps. If you've heard anything about normal savings rate suggestions, it's usually around 10 to 15%, right? Like Dave Ramsey kind of stuff. But if you're trying to retire early, you guessed it, you got to ramp that up pretty significantly. So step 1 is save between 50 and 70% of your income, which I'll agree is high, but I can also attest to it's doable. If you look around at the things you spend money on, there's probably a lot of stuff you don't really need that you might not even realize. 50 to 70%, that's going to be about what's required to be able to pull off retiring early. Step 2 is going to be to accumulate 25% of your annual expenses. So whatever you spend in a year times 25, that's kind of what you're shooting for. And that's really kind of the reverse of the 4% rule, which is really just saying that whatever you have, tucked away, invested, you can live off the 4% and it should last you 30 years or so. So let's say you have $1 million, just for simple math, you pull out 4% a year, that's $40,000, right? So you can see the numbers get kind of big, which is where the 50 to 70% savings rate comes in. So realistically, if you are able to apply this, and let's say you get a 50% savings rate, right? You manage to get that, you should be able to retire within 15 to 17 years is about what your timeline is going to look like to be done. If you can get up to that 70%, you cut that down to 10 years. So that's pretty significant and I think is worth the effort. So there's really 4 FIRE variations. And as it's kind of gone on, I've heard of other ones being added to it, but we're talking about the core 4, we'll call them, I guess. I just made that up. Sounds good. The core 4 FIRE variations. The first one is going to be lean FIRE. So this is ultra frugal minimalist, right? Your lean FIRE, which means you have enough money to cover your expenses, but nothing really outside of that. So you might, live off rice and beans for a little bit, but you don't have to go to work anymore. So that's typically, I would assume, for someone that really hates their job. On the opposite end of the spectrum, you have fat FIRE, and this is higher spending, more comfort. So obviously you need much more put away, but this means that you can live and kind of don't have to worry about money anymore. You can go on trips, you can buy the things you want to buy. Money's not really a concern. All your expenses are met, plus some, and you can enjoy some of the luxuries of life. Then we have Barista FIRE, and it's kind of what it sounds like. You can get a little part-time job. Usually they say Starbucks. I don't know why they pick Starbucks. But you can pick something like that maybe still gives you health insurance or just a little bit of extra money. But the point is, you don't have to work full-time anymore. You can now get by just working part-time. So you still have more freedom. You have the other 20 hours a week to kind of do what you want to do. And this is obviously one of the easier ones to reach out of the ones we talked about so far. And last but not least, we have Coast FIRE. And Coast FIRE really is just, you have enough money stashed away in retirement accounts that if you don't ever add another dollar to it, by the time you need the money, so whenever you have set to retire, by the time you need the money you have put away will have grown enough to cover your expenses, right? That you can live off it. So you don't have to contribute any more money to your retirement. And you can, it kind of frees you up to decide, like, what do you want to do now? Do you want to just spend that money that you would have invested there? Do you want to contribute that to other accounts so you can retire early? It kind of gives you some options. We're going to cover this with 6 steps, relatively simple steps. Step number 1, calculate your FIRE number. It's what we talked about before. Your annual expenses times 25. That's the number you're shooting for. Now you have a target, and now you can move forward with the target in mind. Number 2, budget aggressively. Like we mentioned, this is not a typical goal. This is not a typical retirement, so you can't have a typical budget. You have to budget aggressively. You need to see where is every dollar going, especially if you're, like me, more of a moderate income. You have to account for where these dollars are going because every one of them counts. So make a nice spreadsheet, use a piece of paper. It doesn't matter. As long as you budget aggressively and you can answer for all your dollar bills go. Number 3, build an emergency fund. Guaranteed you've heard this before, probably more times than you care to think about, between 3 to 6 months. This has a lot of variations. How safe is your job? Does your spouse work? Things like that will play a role in how long you want to put this money away for, because your natural instinct, if you want to play it safe, right, would be to go towards 6 months or more. But I would argue that if you over budget your emergency fund, and I don't feel like a lot of people talk about this, but if you overfund your emergency fund, those are dollars that can't really go to work for you, and it'll slow down your growth. So it's really important to pin down how many months do I feel comfortable with. Again, for me, it was honestly, full transparency, it was 3. Right? There's been a couple of changes, with government and all that stuff. I'm not getting all that, but there's been a couple of changes. So I'm a little nervous. So I've added an extra month or so onto that. So I'm 4 to 5 months is where I'm comfortable now, but personal preference. Number 4, pay off high interest debt. And this means things like credit cards. Credit cards typically is the big one. That's usually the one that's high. Student loans usually aren't that high. House I wouldn't worry about, but I would also pay off car loans. And that can vary from high to low, but it's a depreciating asset. So I would like to get rid of that. But definitely anything you have with a high interest rate, I would say anything over 4% interest rate, I'm trying to get rid of that as soon as possible. Number 5 is maximize tax advantaged accounts. So these are things like your IRA, Roth IRA, 401k, anything that gives you a tax benefit or a tax incentive. Now remember, if you're trying to retire early, you can't access these accounts until you're 59 and a half. Okay, yes, there's a couple ways to like work the system and get it earlier, but I, for one, don't want to deal with all that. So those are retirement accounts, but you also still want to take advantage of some of that. So the way I'm doing it personally is I have those accounts set up for when I'm retired at age 59 and a half. And then I have a brokerage / bridge account, whatever you want to call it, that's going to carry me from when I plan on retiring at age 50. So at age 50, I use my bridge account. It's going to carry me. Meanwhile, my retirement accounts are still growing and growing and growing until I turn 60. And then this money, hopefully, is not depleted, but even if it is, who cares? Now I have my retirement accounts that I can access that were tax deferred. And that takes me right into number 6, which is invest all additional funds into something like a bridge account, right? It can be a bridge account. It can be real estate if you're into real estate, but you need to invest something because you're going to have to kind of cover the gap between when you plan on retiring and retirement age. To be 100% honest, I feel like this is overlooked and it's not really spoken about hardly ever when I watch anything on YouTube in particular. And I don't know why that is, but it's a little frustrating for me because we got to be clear here. Financial independence, retirement early, FIRE, I don't think can be achieved by everyone. I'm going to say it's not for everyone. And that might sound crazy. And I don't want to burst your bubble. I think you have a chance. But it's for high income earners. Let's be real. moderate income, again, I'm moderate income, you can make it happen. But you have to be much more dialed in. If you're an engineer or a software engineer, or you work in IT and you're making 150 and your spouse is making 150, I don't want to go off on a tangent, but I see that on YouTube all the time and it really frustrates me because I can't relate to it. And I feel like it's still being sold like it's still possible for your average Joe. And again, I'm not saying it's not possible. I am saying it's going to take a lot. And if you can increase your income, which is also going to take a lot, that's not an easy thing to do. I know it's not an easy thing to do, but it is possible. And it is going to be required to reach financial independence. And especially to retire early, you're going to need at least above a moderate to a high income, right? That can come from your job, from a side hustle, from a business, whatever. But it is going to be one of the requirements because you can't get blood from a turnip. My mom would always say that, right? Can't get blood from a turnip. Healthcare costs before age 65 is another big concern if you're going to retire early. And this is the reason why a lot of people move to other countries because, we live in Europe right now and healthcare here is nothing at all like in the States. It's nothing. We usually go, my son, when we first moved here, my son broke his arm in a skateboarding accident and I took him, he got x-rays, got a cast, took him back. It was usually about $30 a visit. And that was including the x-rays and the cast. So it's nothing. And that was without using insurance. Insurance didn't cover that part. It's a good option. If you can, not everyone can do that. I understand because you have family in different situations, but it's something to consider if you're going to retire early is how are you going to take care of the healthcare aspect? Market risk is also another big issue, right? There's something called sequence of returns where if the year you retire, the market takes a dip and you're still pulling out the same amount of money, it has a negative impact, a huge negative impact on the rest of your retirement, right? So my plan, and you can do what you want again, my plan is to keep my money in stocks when I retire, but I'm going to have 1.5 to 2 years of cash on the side as a buffer so that if I just have the worst luck on the planet and the year I retire, the stock market dips, I don't want to sell all my assets at a discount. I don't want to be forced to sell them. So in that case, I'll be able to dip into my other funds or my cash that I have set aside to kind of carry me until it recovers and keep me out of that sequence of return risk. Social isolation, I feel like is something else no one's going to talk about because let's be honest, I don't know a lot of people that retired early. I don't think I know anyone. Maybe you do. But the problem's going to be then if I retire early and let's say on Wednesday at noon, I want to go fishing or I want to go on a trip randomly, who am I going to go with? Like, obviously your spouse, but who are you going to go with? Like, all your friends are still working, right? So there's going to be part of that social isolationism. But I'll be honest, you might be used to it because if you're on the FIRE journey, unless you have like a big community around you there, you'll probably feel that on the journey already. Financial security, freedom of choice, more time with family, and work on your terms. I feel like those are wonderful benefits. You basically have the chance to do what you want to do, when you want to do it, with who you want to do it. So even though we talked about some of the sacrifices and some of the potential hardships or difficulties, challenges that might come up with pursuing FIRE, if I look at those benefits, they greatly outweigh any of that. And I'm more than happy to continue the journey. It's really a decision that only you can make for yourself. But you have to be honest with yourself. You have to ask yourself, what does retirement even mean to you? Are you comfortable living a frugal lifestyle? And I don't mean a cheap lifestyle. I mean frugal, where you're just more intentional with your money. You are going to have to sacrifice some things, let's be honest. But you have to keep the goal in mind. Can you save aggressively? Are you okay saving aggressively? And the last question, and I think this might be the most important question, is what are you going to do with all the free time? Is there something, you know, there's the saying, I don't know who said it, but that you should retire to something, not from something. So you want to make sure, like, I'm doing this so that I can retire and have my time back so that I can do A, B, and C. So is it right for you? Really? Only you can answer those questions and you can decide. Hope this was a helpful video. Look forward to seeing you next week.